The temp agencies had a nickname for the women they sent out to offices. Not workers, not staff. One man in the business called them movable office equipment, and that was the polite version. This was the 1950s. A woman could be sharp, trained, and good at her job and still get treated like something you swapped out when it stopped being useful. It wasn't only her boss. It was the banks, the courts, the government itself. She could earn her own paycheck and still not really own it. At number 9, a mother a court wouldn't let handle her own son's estate for one reason. She was a woman. And at number 1, the legal reason her paycheck was never really hers. Every bit of this is real, on the record. Hit subscribe. Number 25, the single girl they still preferred. For years, the rule was simple. A woman got married, a woman got fired. By the 1950s, that rule was finally dying out. Most companies had dropped it, but something quieter moved in to take its place. In the interview, an office manager would lean back, friendly as could be, and ask a young woman whether she was planning to marry soon. If she said yes, she wasn't rejected. Nothing that obvious. She just slid a little further down the pile, and somebody else got the call back. Nobody wrote this down. Nobody had to. The old rule was gone on paper, but everyone in that room still remembered it. So they kept following it, quietly, without ever saying it out loud. She never even knew it happened. She just never heard back, and no one ever told her why. Number 24, the movable equipment. In 1946, a man in Detroit had an idea. When an office needed a girl to fill in, someone out sick, someone on vacation, he would send one over for a day or a week. He called it Kelly Girl Service. By the middle of the 1950s, he was sending out around 20,000 women a year. They were screened first. How they looked, how they carried themselves, how fast they could type. Then they were sent out. No pension, no health coverage. None of the protections a regular employee slowly earned. One man in the industry summed the whole thing up in a single line. A temp, he said, was basically just another kind of movable office equipment. Brought in when you needed her. Sent home when you did not. And on either end, nobody owed her a word of explanation. Number 23, the school that trained her for nothing. Harvard and Radcliffe built something real for women. A management training program. An actual path meant to take a woman out of the typing pool and turn her into an administrator, someone with a title, someone who ran things. In 1952, Harvard's own people studied it and said there was demand. Keep it going. 1 year later, it was shut down. The reason given was money. So the one real door built to move women up into management closed, and the men's path through the same business school stayed wide open. Same building, same professors, same degree on the wall. Nothing changed for them. The women in that program weren't failing. There was no scandal, no drop in enrollment anyone pointed to. The only thing that closed was the door with her name on it, and it never opened again. Number 22, the Veterans 5 Points. After the war, the country wanted to take care of its veterans. Fair enough. So it gave them a boost. If you were a veteran, you got extra points added to your government job exam. Whole categories of jobs were set aside for veterans first. And if a boss wanted to hire someone who wasn't a veteran, he had to write down why. He could even mark the better paying jobs men only right on the form. By 1951, about half the federal workforce were veterans. Nobody ever wrote a rule that said no women. They didn't need to. They built a second ladder into the good jobs and reserved it for military service. And women had almost never been allowed to serve in the first place. The ladder was there. It just wasn't hers to climb. Number 21, the floor with no wage on it. In 1938, America got its first minimum wage, a real floor. From then on, no worker could be paid less than that. But the law quietly left people out. Retail workers, service workers, and that gap stayed open the entire decade. So a woman answering phones at a small shop or a little service office had no minimum wage at all. None. Her boss could pay her whatever he could get away with. And what he could get away with turned out to be almost nothing. There was no floor to catch her, no number the law said he couldn't go below. The famous law that was supposed to protect every working American never made it to her desk. She wasn't left out on purpose. She was just never written in. And nobody came back to fix it for more than 20 years. Number 20, the shift she wasn't allowed to work. In a lot of states, there were laws that said a woman couldn't work at night, couldn't work past a certain number of hours in a day. And it was all dressed up as kindness. We're protecting her health. We're protecting her family. But those late hours, those long shifts, were exactly how a man earned overtime. It was how he reached the better jobs, the ones that needed someone to stay late. So a woman wasn't allowed anywhere near that money. The law didn't shield her from anything hard. It shielded the bigger paycheck from her. A man could take home extra for the same night's work. She was sent home before the extra started. Nobody asked whether she wanted the protection. They decided for her and called it a favor. And the favor cost her a raise she was never allowed to earn. Number 19, the merit system that wasn't. The government made a promise. Going all the way back to the 1800s, federal jobs would be fair. You take a test, you get hired on your score, and nothing else matters. Pure merit. That was the whole idea. In 1954, the government checked its own numbers to see how that promise was holding up. The women were all bunched at the bottom, the lowest clerical grades. On average, a woman was making around $3,500 a year. A man, over $4,600. More than $1,000 apart every year. And this was inside the one system in the country that was supposed to run on the test score alone. Nothing but merit. The same exam, the same rules on paper, and a gap that wide underneath. The numbers told a different story. They always had. Number 18, the machine room split in two. By the 1950s, big companies ran on punch card machines. Whole rooms of them. This was the computer before there were computers. And the work in those rooms split right down the middle. The women were put on the key punch machines. Loud, repetitive, hunched over a keyboard all day, hauling heavy boxes of cards across the floor. The men were put on the tabulators, the machines that read the cards and produced the reports. Better pay, more respect. A step up. And a woman who'd spent years mastering the key punch, who knew it better than anyone in the building, almost never got moved up to the tabulator. Same kind of skill, same kind of machine, same room. She could train the man who sat down at the tabulator beside her and still not be allowed to move to it herself. The step up simply wasn't for her. Number 17, the secretary who couldn't join. If office workers wanted better pay and better hours, they had one real move. Organize, form a union, push back together, because one person alone never wins that fight. But there was a catch, and it fell hardest on secretaries. If you worked closely with the boss, the man who set the wages and handled the fights with labor, you were locked out of the union, automatically. The reason on paper was that you were too close to management. Split loyalties, they called it. Nobody actually believed she was a spy. She just sat near the people in charge. And because of where her desk happened to be, she lost the one thing that might have helped her. The same protection everyone else down the hall still had. The clerks could organize. The typist further from the boss could organize. She couldn't, and she never got a vote in the matter. Number 16, the union that got purged out from under her. There was one union really going after office work. Insurance offices, banks, places that had never had a union in their lives. It was reaching the women nobody else reached. Then, in 1950, it was gone. Not because of anything the workers did, This was the era of loyalty oaths, of hunting down anyone accused of being a communist. And in the middle of it, the labor movement itself expelled the union. Cut it loose. So all those secretaries, heads down, typing away, lost the one group in the country fighting for them. For the rest of the decade, whatever they might have won, better pay, shorter hours, a way to complain without being fired, went with it. It happened far over their heads, in rooms they were never invited into, over a fight that had nothing to do with them. That was just how she was treated inside the office. Hired for her looks and her manners, put on the noisy machine, shut out of the union. One law at a time, one closed door at a time, written out of every room where she might have had a say. But work was only half the story. Once the banks and the courts got their hands on her money, it got worse. Number 15, the commission that couldn't hear her. In 1945, New York did something no state had done. It passed a real law against discrimination on the job, and it set up a commission with actual teeth. This commission could investigate your boss, fine him, take him to court. Finally, somewhere to go. But when they wrote the law, they spelled out exactly who it covered: race, religion, color, where you came from. That was the whole list. Sex wasn't on it. Not one word. So a woman turned away from a job for the simple fact that she was a woman could walk into that commission, the one built to punish discrimination, and be told there was nothing they could do. A man denied work for his religion had a case. She, denied for being a woman, had none. She wasn't on the list. The one door built for this shut in her face. Number 14, the club that wouldn't have her. Rotary, Kiwanis, the Lions Club. This was where the men of a town actually did business, every week over lunch. And it was never really about the lunch. It was the handshakes, the introductions, the deals that got made, and the favors that got traded. That's where a career got its push. All three clubs were men only. In one Oklahoma town in 1951, the women gave up and started their own club on the side, the Kiwanis Ladies, because they couldn't get into the real one, and the real clubs wouldn't let a woman actually join for another 36 years. By the time they finally did, every deal made at 1,000 Tuesday lunches was already done. The contracts were signed, the promotions were handed out. She was never in the room where it happened. Number 13, the lunch hour she was locked out of. In cities all over the country, the nice restaurants and hotel bars would not seat a woman during the weekday lunch rush. They would not let her in the door, and they were honest about why. That was when the important business got done. That was when the deals happened, over a steak and a handshake. So an ambitious woman at the office could type up the memo about that deal the next morning, every word of it. She just could not be in the room when the deal was made, not because of anything she wore, not because of anything she had done, only because the men closing it would rather she was not there, so she was not. She knew the numbers cold, better than half the men at the table. She stayed at her desk and waited to hear how it went. Number 12, the floor she couldn't stand on. During the war, with the men shipped overseas, women finally worked the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. First time in its history. They did the job. Then the moment the war ended, every one of them was pushed right back off it. The rest of the 1950s, that floor stayed all men. It stayed that way until 1967, when one woman, Muriel Siebert, finally bought her way in. One woman, over 1,300 men. And for years after she arrived, there still wasn't a women's restroom near the trading floor. She'd have to leave the floor and go find one somewhere else in the building. In more than 100 years of running the place, it had never once crossed anyone's mind that they might need one. That's how completely she'd been left out of the picture. Number 11, the license that didn't open the door. In the whole country, in the 1950s, there were maybe 600 women who were licensed accountants in the entire country, and getting the license still didn't get you through the door. One woman, fully qualified, sat down across from a partner at a big national firm. He told her, flat out, that the firm had a policy. They didn't hire women for the professional jobs. Another woman was taken to lunch by her own boss, so he could gently explain that she was too pretty to be an auditor. He meant it as a compliment. The license was real. The years of study were real. She had passed the same exam every man in that office had passed. The firm decided in writing that none of it counted for her. Not the exam, not the degree, not the work. Number 10, the check she couldn't collect. A woman has a steady job. Her husband takes work in another city. The family moves and she has to quit. Now she's out of work through no fault of her own. She files for unemployment, and she's denied. The state decided she quit on purpose. She chose to follow her husband, so that was on her. One state put it in plain writing. A wife's job is to go where her husband goes, and that's not the state's problem to pay for. She'd paid into that system with every paycheck at her old job, week after week, year after year. The lost job was real. The rent coming due at the end of the month was real. The check wasn't coming. She'd done everything right, and the answer was still no. None of this needed a villain. No one twirling a mustache behind a desk. It needed a bank clerk, a judge, a claims examiner, each one following a rule written down long before any of them arrived. Each one certain he was only doing his job. And what they did next was to the things she believed were already hers. Number 9, the estate she couldn't administer. There was a law in Idaho on the books since 1864, and it said something plainly. When it comes to handling a dead person's estate, if a man and a woman both want the job, the man wins, automatically. So when a mother and her ex-husband both stepped up to handle their own son's estate after he died, the court didn't get to ask which one would do it better. The law had already answered. Give it to the father. Being a woman settled it. More than a dozen states had some version of that same rule. It took until 1971 for the Supreme Court to strike it down. That was the first time the court ever said the Constitution's promise of equal treatment applied to a woman at all. Number 8, the mortgage he could sign alone. In Louisiana, they had a law they actually called head and master. Here's what it meant. A husband could take out a mortgage on the family house or sell it outright without his wife knowing and without her signature anywhere on it. It did not matter that they owned it together, both their names on the deed. It did not matter that her paycheck helped buy it. That law stayed on the books until 1979. So a woman could work her whole life, put her own money into that house, help pay off that mortgage year after year, and still find out her name meant nothing on the paper that put the roof over her head at risk. He did not need her permission. He did not even need to tell her. The law never once said he had to ask her. Number 7, the signature she needed. A woman wants to open a simple charge account at a store, just a store account, and they tell her she needs a man to co-sign, a husband, a father, a brother, some man to put his name down next to hers. It didn't matter what she earned. It didn't matter that she'd held a steady job for years. And some stores went further. When they figured out how much credit to give her, they counted her paycheck as only half of what it really was. $1 she earned was worth 50 cents to them. She earned that money every week, right there on the record. And they still wouldn't trust her to be good for it. unless a man was standing behind her. Her own name, on its own, wasn't enough. Number 6, the income the bank didn't count. A husband and wife go to buy a house, they both work. They both bring home a paycheck. But when the bank runs the numbers on the loan, it crosses her income off the page. It doesn't count it. The reason was simple. They assumed she'd get pregnant and quit any minute, so why bother counting her? It didn't matter how long she'd held her job. It didn't matter that she never missed a paycheck. It didn't matter that half the money on the table was hers. The house they could afford together shrank to the house he could afford alone. Her salary sat right there on the form, in her own name. She earned every dollar of it herself, and the bank acted as if the paycheck didn't exist. Number 5, the dollar that started at his tax rate. In 1948, the tax law changed so married couples could combine their income on one return. For a family with one earner, that was a nice break. For a working wife, it did something ugly. Her paycheck was stacked on top of his, so her very first dollar of the year was taxed as if it were his last. At his rate, up at the top. And back then, the top rates could climb past 80%. The more he'd already earned that year, the less her paycheck was worth the moment it reached her. A single woman doing the exact same job kept far more of her pay. The wedding ring changed the math. She could go to work and grind just as hard as anyone. The government still took most of it because of what he made, not what she did. Number 4, the retirement he was owed for her work. Social Security had a rule built in from the very start. A wife automatically got a benefit worth half of her husband's, whether or not she'd ever worked a day in her life. The part that stings comes next. A woman could go to the office for 30 years, pay into Social Security out of every single paycheck she ever earned, and when she retired, all that money she paid in might not get her one dime more than she'd have gotten just for being someone's wife, for working none of those years at all. The whole system was built around him, his work, his paycheck. Her own 30 years of showing up and paying in barely moved the needle. She had done the labor. The system counted it as if the labor had never happened. Notice what these last few had in common. None of them were about her work. Nobody looked at her typing or her filing and marked her down. It came down to one box on a form. Married. That box, checked long before she ever sat at her desk, decided what her money was worth. What comes next is the plainest version of that idea. Number 3, the death that paid less. If a man died on the job in Missouri, his widow got death benefits. No questions. Paid out automatically. Flip it around. If a woman died on the job, her husband didn't get that. First, he had to prove it. Prove he'd actually leaned on her paycheck to live, or prove he was too sick or too hurt to earn his own. Only then did he see a dime. So ensuring a woman's life cost the company less, because when she died, the person she left behind had a much harder time ever collecting on it. She paid the same into the system. She worked the same hours, in the same building, under the same risks. Her death was simply worth less on the books, and everyone doing the math knew it. Number 2, the job offer that came with a typewriter. In 1952, a young woman graduated near the top of her class at Stanford Law School. She had been an editor on the Law Review. She applied to every big California firm she could find. She got exactly one offer: legal secretary, because they told her they did not hire women as lawyers. Around the same time, another brilliant young woman could not get hired at all because everyone assumed she wanted to teach or type. She finally landed at a firm that had never once hired a woman for anything but secretarial work. The first woman ended up on the Supreme Court of the United States. The second won a Nobel Prize. 2 of the finest minds the country would produce. And in 1952, the only door either of them was offered led straight to a typewriter. Number one, the paycheck that was legally his. Here's where it lands. In Arizona, as late as 1956, a married woman's paycheck was only her own if she was living apart from her husband. If she lived with him, like a normal married woman, everything she earned at the office wasn't really hers. By law, it was his. His to manage, his to control, his to spend, even if he never set foot in the place where she worked. So she could get up every morning, go in, do the job, and cash the check with her own two hands. And none of it changed the plain fact underneath. That money was never fully hers. She could spend it, but only because he let her. The law said so, out loud. It never had been hers from the first day she started. Picture her one last time. A Friday afternoon in 1955. Her pay envelope in the desk drawer. Money she earned. Money that in more than a few states she couldn't fully call her own. The lawmakers who built all this weren't monsters. They were lawmakers, bankers, the man in the personnel office, each one following a rule somebody wrote long ago that nobody ever stopped to question. That's how it usually works. Not with cruelty, with habit. And every bit of it is real. It's in the laws. It's in the court records. It's in the company's own policies. A firm that put "we don't hire women" in writing. A government that let bosses stamp jobs men only. A paycheck that, by law, was never hers. They called it protection. They called it merit. They called it standards. It was a cage, and she spent her whole working life inside it. Did your mother or your grandmother work a job like this? Tell me what she was never allowed to do.